Okay, Phyllis, so excited to talk to you about your Enneagram results.
I'm excited to talk about it as well.
Yes, so I'm curious what resonated with you as you looked through your report.
Well, one thing I thought was interesting is it really connected to another assessment.
Okay.
So the positive intelligence, the saboteur assessment, my main saboteur is the controller.
Oh, okay.
So I understand it in terms of like when it's helpful and when it's lying to me and it's not helpful and it's in my way. This really, the Enneagram really highlighted that again to me. Like here's opportunities for it to really build you and make you strong. And here's where it can be a challenge.
Okay, good. Anything specifically that was either particularly surprising or resonant for you?
What was resonant for me was the reason why my 8 is the active controller is because it doesn't really want to show vulnerability. That's what's been my whole life story. So it really made sense.
And you've been conscious of that? Because I'll say for me, I'm not really conscious of it. Yeah. What vulnerability?
I became conscious of it, I think, just in the last couple of years. That's really surfaced for me. Like, I think because my husband always says I over control. So I had to really understand, like, why did I do that? And it's vulnerability and it's a safety. Feels like it's safe for me to be in control.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense too. So you did also score. I don't know how familiar, I know you're familiar with your Enneagram type, but I don't know how familiar you are with the instincts, which we'll talk a little bit about today.
Not at all.
But you did score as self-preservation. So safety and controlling things to keep the environment safe is part of the core motivation of both your type and also your instincts.
Makes perfect sense.
Okay. Excellent. Well, let's talk a little bit more about you. I'm gonna give you just more of a sense of what your report said or what I see as someone who uses these reports in kind of coaching and leadership development. But this time is for you. And thank you for letting us record and sharing that out. So whatever you want to share or feel comfortable sharing or however you want to go.
Okay, let's see. Let me see where I want to share. I'll go quickly from beginning to end.
Oh, good. Oh, you're right. I thought I would. Yeah, please.
You want to share?
Well,
you share.
I'm going to take you through more, but if you...
Yeah, no, let's do it the way you want to do it.
Okay.
Great. Sure? Yes.
Okay. Okay. So one of the things that we note is there's actually something in the Enneagram that the IQ9, the integrative Enneagram, called centers of expression. And so it relates to action, feeling, and thinking. And so what happens is some people call this tri-type. What happens is your thinking center came out as the most expressed, and you scored on that as type 5. So you're likely to want to get a lot of data, have your time behind the scenes. Okay, you're already laughing. Have your time behind the scenes to reflect and review that data. You may be intentional about who you engage with or don't engage with. Oftentimes 5s are more kind of introverted, more kind of analytically focused. So having that thinking center is likely your primary comfort. Then you scored in your action center. So the 8, you take that confident action, you move forward boldly like the 8 does. And then your feeling center came in as type 3, so more focused on achievement. So sometimes with the type 3s can be more focused on I love that you're just smiling. 3s can be focused on other people and what they're achieving. Kind of, you will be loved by your accomplishments. So for you, the feeling center is not as expressed, but then the 3, it's also not as expressed. So what you may find with a kind of dominant thinking center also being an assertive type is that you have a strong comfort in gathering your data and making bold, decisive decisions. But the feelings and the emotions of both yourself and other people, that vulnerability, may be a little bit messier.
Yes, absolutely.
It seems like there was some resonance for you.
All of it.
Okay. What's coming up?
Okay, so definitely the thinking is me. So everything that I do requires me to analyze data, collect, read. I need time to reflect on it, and then I make big decisions. So it really shows up as an entrepreneur with my own business, but also in my family life, I'm the same way. So I don't make any moves without really knowing first. My husband's always laughing at all the books in our house. It's a constant stream of books from Amazon. Right? I never not know enough.
I appreciate your service.
Exactly. And what I always say is, like, I wish I had more time to read. like, I think that's like a marker for me always. Like
Okay.
if I do more, then I would feel like I can accomplish something. So I
Okay.
have to know more. And then I go into setting actions and really, and then the achiever about that being my feeling place, that's true. So I do rate like where I am in life, how I'm doing based on, did I achieve something?
Oh, okay. So that's a lot of resonance.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Okay. So one of the things we look at with the centers of expression is the standard phrase that people are used to is ready, aim, fire. You're scored as fire, aim. Sorry, you scored as aim, fire, ready.
Aim,
Because
fire.
aim is thinking, like, where am I going? What am I doing? Fire is action. And then the feeling center is the ready. So I'm curious, oftentimes when I say someone's phrase, it does resonate with them. I'm curious when I say like aim, fire, ready, do you find in your practice or in your business or just in life that sometimes you'll research and act, but then maybe you don't feel as ready or the emotions come up after?
That could be in my, yeah, I've had that actually. And I think 2 years ago, I noticed that in my business decisions.
Okay.
So I was doing a lot of that. And I think what got me off kilter with that is that I had success with it. So I would achieve. And then I realized I didn't really like what I was doing.
Ooh,
the projects I didn't like. Yes. Mm-hmm. And so I was in a state of burnout because I was achieving and doing. And then I realized I don't really like it. And it's too much. And so I had to make a decision then, like listen more to my intuition and my feeling before I decide to do a project.
I love it. So then this in some ways is validating what you already know. So some of the things to consider is as a primary 8, we are both in the instinct or body triad. So making that space for your body, making that space for your intuition, making space for what I call the intuitive data set. What does your intuition say? What is your instinct on this? Is going to be an important part of your data collection. And then what you said about threes often feel the work that threes have to do is to connect to what's called their heart's desire, because often they're so focused on achieving that they don't actually know what they would want. So potentially pull, because you're so strong in the thinking center, we don't want to change that. That's part of your books and how you sustain yourself and what you love. But maybe pull some of the kind of intuitive or instinctual element and some of the feelings, what do I actually want, into the research portion of the data.
Mm-hmm. Okay. That's interesting because I think I'm leaning more into, I'm guided by something that I really always wanted to do.
Okay.
Good. And it's really connected to my purpose and what just lights me up. I haven't achieved it yet.
That's okay.
So it's a constant, like I feel like this drive, but it's helping me make decisions, like whether or not I want to do something or not. Now I'm listening more to, does it connect back to that?
Okay. So it does sound like you're kind of connecting within yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yes. More than I normally do. Okay.
Okay, good. Keep that up. Yeah, because the goal of what we're talking about today is not for you to change anything. It's to say, hey, what do you have? How do you leverage what you have? Are there areas you want to enhance or improve? Are there things you want to change? But I feel strongly that if we know our patterns, we can use our patterns to our advantage. So you have been served as a successful business owner in your life in these multiple ways because of the fact that you think and then take action and then the feelings come up later. But it's something to consider, knowing that that's potentially a pattern for you, thinking about that ahead of time. You know, what is my heart's desire? What emotions do I need to kind of put in here? Or are there certain people that you can leverage, such as myself? I score highest in feeling center. So I'm always thinking about the feelings and the emotion. So that's another thing to think about as well. Who can we, and this is the difference between our instincts, which I'll get into. I'm an 8 social as opposed to an 8 self-preservation. So I'm always thinking about who can help me with this. Who can I leverage? Who will support this mission I'm driving towards? So you and I share that drive, that constant execution, but there's, as a social instinct, I'm automatically, not even consciously, kind of scanning the horizon. Who do we need? Who will help us get there? Who has what we need? Whereas you are one of the people that is more likely to be a complete self-sustaining, resourceful on your own, especially because you're going to hit the books first. You're going to hit the books and have the research done. Then as a self-preservation, you're going to have the like power cords and the snacks and maybe even the blankets and things like that.
Yes.
Right? It's like I follow
right.
that, right?
Yes.
And then you have me, social, coming in and being like, hey, does anybody have a power cord?
It's so true.
And if we have trust, you'll share those things with me. So what's interesting as we look at, and we can transition into the instincts, self-preservation, it's figuring out what do you need to feel safe and how do you cultivate that safety? And that's your primary instinct. We all have all the instincts, but my self-pres is like teeny tiny. But what I realized is actually I lean into my social instinct, and I often create relationships with self-pres who then thankfully like me enough to share their story.
Right.
Get our needs met. We just get our needs met differently.
So that's interesting. So my self-preservation. Okay. So I'm trying to see, I feel like it's everywhere. I feel like it's, yes.
I'm sure
that makes sense.
It's our primary instinct. So when you, after this session, if you look back at your report, page 11 layers type 8 with the self-pres instinct, it should feel like it's like ripped out of your diary.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So if your type and instinct resonate, it feels, at least for me, it feels very true. So as we think about self-preservation and also type 8, you're looking at potentially what you said about vulnerability. Do you need to be strong at all times? Do you have to achieve and protect others? Like, is that your sole role? Because it's likely your automatic role. I'm going to protect you, make sure you take care of your needs so you can also protect and control the situation, which is like, may also be to take care of others. Yes. But there's a very strong sense of self, which likely infuses your leadership.
So interesting, because my life really does require me to be in control. So maybe it's the level, the degree of it I need to look at.
So tell me, I mean, if you're willing to share.
Absolutely. So one, I have a child who's on the spectrum. Okay. So I feel like control from the moment he was born has been something I've had to have. Every decision, I've got to think it through and be in control of it. And to relinquish it means bad results, bad outcomes can happen. So it's like it's a stressor, right? And I believe that I can control things probably more than what I can.
Okay. Yeah.
And then
there's safety in that, right?
Safety,
there's
completely.
Safety in our perceived control, whether it's perceived or actual.
That's right. And safety for my child. That's what I believe.
Of course.
So that's happening. And then I am, my husband's an entrepreneur too, as well. And then, but he's just starting his business. So I'm the breadwinner, primary breadwinner.
Keep him safe.
Control is mine. It has to be mine because I have to keep the family safe, keep the boat upright. That's where my control really, I think, takes a hold of.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So in the report, especially as you look at like page 11, which layers the instinct and the type, there will be development exercises. So for example, it talks about developing an openness to potentially making space for your or others' feelings. Because you are so strong, independent, and self-reliant, sometimes it's difficult, and I'll speak for myself as well. It's difficult to even let people in to even express that we need something.
Oh, yes.
And what it says is the true strength of an 8 is revealed when you invite others to support you and work on expressing more of what you want and need without shame or expectation of having all those needs met. And I'll say for myself, that's hard. Like if I'm going to go out there on a limb and express my needs and then it doesn't get met, I'm like, yeah.
Right.
Why am I showing you my underbelly if you're not going to help me?
Yes. Right. So I'm very careful too, and how much I show, and maybe not always consciously aware, but I know I have more walls around me than probably, or they're higher than probably others around me have them.
Okay. And I think that's great awareness because I will say for myself, and kind of as I've leaned into the Enneagram and learned more about the Enneagram, for me, I'm like, what walls? And it's like, oh, everyone else can see this.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So I was talking to someone because they say like eights obviously have a very kind of charismatic, well, not always charismatic. Eights have a very strong presence, a presence people react to. And it happens even when they're not saying anything. And so I was talking to my mom about it, and I was like WTF, like, how am I supposed to help other people feel safe? Because I'm social, right? So I'm thinking about like, don't want people to be afraid of me or feel intimidated. How do I take care of the room? How do I take care of the community? And I was like, well, if people are going to be intimidated, whether I say something or not, what am I supposed to do? Like, what am I supposed to do with that? And she said, this is my mom, who not only raised an 8, but was married to an 8 as well. And she was like, well, it's kind of like a German Shepherd. Like, you can have a German Shepherd or a wolf or some kind of predator, and it's a predator. And people have a reaction to that. And that to me, that gave me more compassion, because instead of being just frustrated, like, obviously I'm not expressing that frustration, but understanding like people are sensing power. How do we make a safe space for others? How do we, in your case, how do you make sure that you also feel safe with that? But even managing others' reactions and how that shows up in the work that we get, or how we support our clients, or what kind of bias or opposition is presented in our way. For me, it was helpful to see like, oh, some of people's reaction to you is just how you would see like we have a different reaction to a bird than a German Shepherd. Okay.
Yes. Right. And that's just how it is.
Yeah.
Well, so sometimes that has served me, like in some industries that I've worked in, some jobs, it's been really beneficial to be an 8. I might've been around a lot of 8s as well. They were very, just a big presence, very strong, intimidating. So it helped me, but it was also self-preservation, because they were so strong that I could protect myself by being in control as well. In coaching, that's different. Yeah. So I'm really aware of like, when I meet a client for the first time, I'm very aware, like my energy is very strong. So I just want to make sure that I am quieter, leaning in, looking a little bit warmer than I normally am. Yes. Yeah. Just try to like, so it may not be when I'm coaching them, I'm going to be real smiley, because I'm more intense listening kind of person, but I am aware that my 8 comes really strong. And if you don't know me yet, that might be like, oof, that's a lot right there.
Oh, interesting. Okay. I love it. I say bring it. But hey,
bring that energy.
Yeah. Right? But birds of a feather, we are, so 8, 3, and 7 are assertive types. They're more comfortable in asserting and kind of saying, like, boldly going after what they want to need. So you score high with both 8 and 3. I score high with both 8 and 7. So we do have kind of a double assertion. So we're potentially more comfortable in those environments, but it is important for us to be aware, we walk with a big stick, so to speak, right? So us being aware of that in those environments, and to see that other people will be reacting to that, whether we're intentional or not. Okay, but back to you. Let's take it back.
No, that all makes sense. Are you going to talk about the wings?
Oh, totally. Yeah.
Because I thought that was so fascinating.
Yeah. Okay. Let's tie a bow on your instincts, if that's okay, and then we'll talk. Okay. So from you scored highest as self-preservation, making sure that you're feeling safe, checking the exits, things like that. This even will impact like how you go on vacation. And then especially as you talk about your son, because you're trying to take care of someone else's needs and your husband. So this makes sense. Your next instinct is social. So social doesn't necessarily mean how much you want to socially interact with people. Sometimes what it means how's the group doing? Where's the power in the group? Where's the authority in the group? Where's the oppression in the group? Like, socials are always kind of unconsciously even scanning the room. So that comes in as your second instinct. So just know that while you are taking care of yourself first, you're then taking care of others. Yes. And then you scored last in 1-to-1. So that's just the kind of depth or intensity of the relationship. We all have all 3 instincts, but we have a kind of primary that we tend to lean into. So I would say for you, and this has probably already come up as well, how do you make sure you're safe? That's primary, so that then you can keep your family safe. That's your social. In some ways, you've already expressed how your instincts are coming up for you.
That is very interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So instincts is not, it's an interesting different kind of study to layer on top of the Enneagram. But what will be interesting is as you're out there interacting with other self-preses and other of your instinct type, like when I interact with other social, we sometimes have shared commonality in the way that sometimes people have shared commonality with people with their Enneagram type.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. So 8s, naturally strong, decisive, intuitive, charismatic, strong leadership, active controller. It's funny when I called it active controller, I was like, well, I'm really active, but I don't really control it. Like, look, I'm gonna like change the title of active controller. It's important. We have awareness. So on the 8 side, you have a choice of wings. So we have the 7, which is the enthusiastic visionary, and the 9, which is the adaptive peacemaker. So you said you wanted to talk about that. What's coming up for you about the wings?
I didn't understand it. It sounded interesting. Like, am I using those to strengthen, or do I have choices about which wing I'm using?
Great question. Yes, you do have choices. So the page in your report, it's either 15 or 23. We'll reference both. We're going to do wings and lines. So what I like about wings is it's kind of like one neighbor has sugar and one neighbor has spice. Now, we're usually the spicy neighbor. So, you can get different things from different places. From a like how you scored perspective, you are not leveraging your wings quite a bit. So that was one of the things that I noticed on your report. So when it comes to what's called like an 8's ability to not feel that they have to enact justice in the world and justice will happen, you scored 100 out of 100 off the charts. But in what the report calls helpful shifts, it doesn't seem like you're necessarily leveraging your wings and your lines as much as you could. So we can absolutely talk more about that. So what's important to know is that ultimately you want to ground in your type 8, like that's your core type. But at the same time, we do have on one side, we have the enthusiastic visionaries, the 7s. They can see all the possibilities. 7s remind me of that. What's that toy where it's rounded at the bottom? So if you hold it down, but as soon as you let it go, it springs back up.
Oh,
kind of like those clowns.
Yes, right.
To me, that's a 7. Like you can't keep a 7 down. Like they're so enthusiastic. They're so buoyant. They're able to see, like when I think about the abundance and the spirit of kind of entrepreneurial vision, I think a lot about the 7. So when you think about integrating the 7 or how that kind of energy might be supportive to you in your life or your business, what comes to mind?
I want to do more of that.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm aware of that. I want that.
Yeah. So it sounds like you want to do a little bit of a lead there. So one of the pages will talk specifically about your wings, and it'll give developmental recommendations for your wings. And it's either 15 or 23. Sorry, I don't want to toggle to your report and toggle away from you, but it'll say like, hey, to lean into your 7, this, and this. It's that integration of play, because likely as a self-pres and also with your thinking center being primary, you likely have a level of seriousness, professionalism, that has served you in your life and your work, I'm sure. But also getting to the place, especially if you're able to, whether it's in life or business or both, to have some fun with it.
Fun. Yes. Okay. I know that's missing in me and who I am.
Yeah. So that's a nice lean to the 7 side. There's a buoyancy and a resilience and a fun that comes in with the 7. So yeah, I, as someone who scores very high 7 and has a dominance towards the 7 wing, I definitely recommend it.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. So on the other side of you is 9, is adaptive peacemaker. And you use this one a little bit more than you use your 7. And so peacemakers are excellent at reading the room. What are people's needs? How do I resolve conflict? How do I mediate? The challenge for peacemakers is sometimes they're so good at reading and making space for everyone else, they may not make space or express for themselves. But 9s are just like such kind of lovable people because they're so attentive to others. And they're also very, when you have a 9 either an 8 that's at home with their 9 wing or a 9 that is tapping into that 8, you have kind of almost like a calm strength. So they still have all the power of the 8s, but they use it to mediate and create peace and create space for others.
Ooh, I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So when looking at your wings, you scored a little bit higher on the 9 side, not score high, like your 3 does not need to win this assessment, right?
Right.
Yeah. No, so by higher, I just mean you're leveraging, you may be a little bit more at home with things on the adaptive peacemaker side, as opposed to some of the things on the kind of enthusiastic visionary side.
I wish I demonstrated more of that quiet strength.
Okay. I mean, what evidence do you have that you don't?
I don't.
Okay.
It's all in my head.
Okay. Because you strike me as a quiet strength.
I think professionally I am. Okay. I think in my home life, I'm less so. I'm so vocal and opinionated. Okay. I would like to just pull that back a little bit and be more just in the strength, but quieter with it. And literally like quiet, like less vocal.
Interesting. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I mean, maybe it's just a matter of thinking of like, how would that serve you and how would that not? Because, that's Michael Bungay Stainer calls it prizes and punishments. So there's prizes and punishments for the way that we are. So, or pros and cons, however you want to look at it. So there's pros and cons for you having that vocal presence. So maybe just try it out, but you're going to see there's pros and cons for stepping back.
Right. Yes.
And actually, so the way that 8s usually get what they want is they usually assert, but your second, how I get what I want, is withdrawn. So most often you assert to get what you want, but then there will be times where you withdraw or kind of maybe I need to go read or go for a walk. Like if you can also, anytime in the body type, so 8, 9, and 1 can invest time and intention in their body is absolutely a positive thing because that's our center. That's where we belong.
And when you say that, do you mean more like mindfulness or literally like physical activity?
So you can decide what it means, but they're in mindfulness, as long as you have a physical connection to your breath, to your body, because 8s, 9s, and 1s are in the kind of body triad, we're most likely to express anger. 8s are going to actively express anger. 9s will often repress. And then it maybe sometimes comes out in an outburst every once in a while. 1s have more of a kind of cold, simmering rage underneath that maybe nobody knows about. But so each triad has a center, which for the 8 is body, and a primary emotion, which for the 8 is also anger. So one of the things to think about, so when all the gyms closed in COVID, I was like, how am I supposed to be a nice person if I'm not working out 6
like, yes.
Like that's a mandatory thing. Like that's a mandatory thing for me. So often too, as a coach, I will say like, hey, I don't care what size you are, how much are you moving your body? And if I find out someone is an 8, 9, or 1, then to me, the moving the body piece is not mandatory. Now, 9s often withdraw and rest. They'll sleep or nap. So sometimes when I'm like, I really need a nap, I'm like, 9 wing, like the 9s understanding. Sometimes 9s will withdraw and actually fall asleep, whereas the 7s kind of lean in and go play, but they have a tendency to overcommit. So regarding a practice for your body, trust your intuition. It has to feel right for you, but it's just kind of integrating your body in whatever practice that may be.
Great. I do feel that way. I have
to spend all day on these little screens.
Yes, exactly. Got to pull away, do something.
Yeah.
With your body.
And consider, the thing is that if you're in your home environment and you're trying to make a change, physically moving may actually help you make that change. So if you're sitting still and you're trying to not say something, that may be difficult for you. But if you're doing something with your hands, or if you're on a treadmill, or if you're walking around, or hey, let's go for a walk, that may, even though that will introduce things that you can't control in your environment in a way that being home may not, feeding into, you have to decide what you want to feed. Do you want to feed your body's needs? Do you want to feed your self-pres needs? Do you want to feed your development needs? Because it's hard to feed everything at once.
Okay. All right. So I do practice every day, moving my body. I love to cycle and lift weights, but I do find I have to do it. I just have to in order to feel like me and be able to really not, otherwise I feel like I'm just exhausted. It gives me actually something back.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think in general, like all animals move, and humans, we've made a strange practice of not moving. But for as an 8, especially because we are more likely to express anger outwardly to other people. And then often 8s are often in positions of power, whether intentionally or not intentionally. I believe it's part of our responsibility as leaders to look in and make sure we have that care so that we're able to interact better with others, which some of what you're hearing is my 8, some of what you're hearing is my social instinct.
Ah, yes.
So you're more likely to, you may be more likely to self-care because it's what you need. I may be more likely to self-care because it helps me be better to others. Regardless, let's both self-care.
Right. Oh, I love the different dimensions.
It's just a different, it's different motivation. Yeah. So those are your wings. So play around with that. Try some things on, see what might be a fit. The other thing to look at is your lines. So 8s naturally, if you think about it as a 3-legged stool, everything on the Enneagram, each type goes to 2 other types. And the integrative Enneagram calls that stress and strain. So sometimes we'll have a place we go into stress, and other times in strain. At the same time, I look at it, not surprisingly, active controller, also known as the challenger. That hasn't necessarily been the case for me. So 8 connects to 5 and 2. Now we know that your 5 is very expressed. That's a way that's a quiet time and space. I'm curious how the 2 comes up for you, that considerate helper. You actually scored even on 2 and 3, but the assessment scored you as a 3, being more prominent.
And that one is what, a considerate helper? Considerate helper. But maybe in my coaching.
Probably. Yeah.
Like that's almost all day, right? I'm really using that quite a bit.
Using your power to help others. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think with my child, it's the same thing.
I often find, to me, what's interesting is in coaching, there's a leading from behind you. How do I support you? How do I hold you up? How do we use I'll speak for myself, but I think this might resonate with you. How do I use my perspective and my level of challenge to support my clients to then go have the advocacy in their lives?
Yes.
But what I find is, and needing to realize as an 8, is that sometimes that ability to negotiate or see things as negotiable is a specialty of the 8s that perhaps the other types aren't as intentional.
Okay.
Yeah. Because a friend of mine was doing her case study. So for the integrative Enneagram, they have an ICF-approved program, and you do a case study on someone. So a friend of mine did her case study on me, and as a development activity, she was like, well, what if you didn't negotiate for what you wanted? And I was like, straight to the heart.
Yes.
I can't even imagine that. Like, what am I alive for if I don't negotiate for what I want? But what a great perspective, not surprisingly, she's a brilliant 5. What a great perspective for her to show me as far as like how I see the world.
Yes. What a challenge.
Totally. But then it's funny because for me, especially when I was younger and earlier in my career, I didn't understand, like, why aren't people saying anything? Why aren't people, especially because you have the 8, we have such a sense of injustice and speaking out against injustice. I wouldn't understand like why other people weren't acting.
Oh, yes. That sense of justice. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So 8s, you often, like, if we're using our power for good, supporting other people. So that's kind of a leaning into 2, how you can use your strength to support others. One of the challenges there, though, is that I will say for myself, sometimes I get overextended because a 2 is what's called a self-forgetting type. So they're so focused on the needs of others, like 9s, so our wings, and 2s, they're so focused on the needs of others, sometimes they forget themselves. Now, you scoring as a self-pres type are maybe less likely to do that, but we have to be careful with that, though we want to lean in and use our strength for good, that we don't overextend.
Oh my gosh, today is such a day for that, because my child had such a hard time sleeping. So I was up with him quite a bit, working on something we're changing with his meds and working on that. And so I had a break between clients, and I went upstairs to the family room and thought a nap would be perfect. That's exactly what I need. But then I thought, oh, a nap would be kind of selfish because he really wants me to like talk to him right now because he's home today. So I chose that instead. And then now I'm like, of course, feeling tired and not at my optimum, but so that shows up for me. Yes.
Yeah. But look at that awareness. And so the awareness gives us new choices, right? So the thing is that, but I would say that may be a moment to lean into the nap was a physical activity for you as a self-preservation. So consider leaning into that because of the quality of energy you'd be able to get later would potentially be higher if your own cup was full.
Now, see, I talk to people all day long about self-care, and I never thought about a nap being a physical activity.
Oh, yeah.
So that's in that camp as well as moving my body. And
I mean, I think so, because there's so much research on sleep, right? Yeah. There's so much research on, I mean, that's when the body recharges. Like the body is working so much while we sleep, and we're not distracting it with all these other things that we're like putting into our necessary. Right. So yeah, I feel like the nines taught me that sleep is a activity, because I think so often as eights, we think active, right? We put the active and active. Oh yeah. You know, so it's like, why am I going to meditate when I can punch something? Right. Like that's our mode. So I feel like the nines who are likely to kind of take a break, more likely potentially to like meditate or have those mindfulness practices, whereas the sevens are going to go play. Like what's, you know, and obviously these are kind of stereotypical, like people are complicated. But the sevens are more likely to go kind of play, fun, you know, can we make this a game? So it sounds like for you that leaning into that nine may feel good.
Yes. Okay. Great. That's interesting.
Yeah. So leaning into, because you do score so high in 5, more than likely you're already integrating a lot of that, but you may sometimes when we integrate high, we over integrate. So take a look at that page in the report. So the report pages I'd say take a look back after this discussion at 11, 23, and 15. And there will be development exercises and just things for you to consider. And consider even checking in on a certain cadence, like 2 weeks from now or a month from now, not as a should, but just knowing that you're a thinking center and you like the information, knowing that this is development recommendations customized for you.
Yes, absolutely. Okay.
Okay. A couple quick things before we wrap up. So we talked a little bit about kind of how you get what you want. 8s are likely to assert. You also scored high in withdrawn. So see withdrawn as a strategy to get what you want. I think sometimes I'll speak for myself as an active controller, I'm like, well, how is withdrawing a strategy? If you think about taking that nap, that is serving your needs. And sometimes responding to that email in the moment, sometimes if we don't reply in that moment, they sort it out or they fix it. Right. So I think, you know, we have our default modes, and the default mode of an 8 is to be assertive and to say, hey, that's not right, or let's do it this way. But knowing that withdrawn or also compliant, like, you know, when do we maybe not be in control? When is going along best? I don't know about you, but that's like nails on a chalkboard for me. Yes. We're low on that one, and that's you know, but just knowing, like, you know, sometimes our primary strategy doesn't work. So if and when you actively addressing something isn't yielding the results that you want, thinking about what would happen if you withdrew, what would happen if you were compliant for now, and perhaps tried another point. Okay. So food for thought on that. The other strategies, as far as like when we don't get what we want, you are more likely as an 8 to react to that, but then also you scored very high in competence. So you're gonna react and say, hey, you know, this didn't go well, or I'd like it to be this way, or can we negotiate this? But then also you're gonna make the most of whatever it is. Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And one of the one that you're a little bit lower on, or the one you don't use as often, is positive outlook. So what's the best case scenario? What if this is actually working the way that it should? So I offer those because we have our defaults for a reason. They absolutely serve us. But if they're conscious, if we have that kind of moment between stimulus and response, that becomes a choice point. And then sometimes we can decide, hey, actually, is there something else that would actually serve me better in this situation?
Oh, I like that. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So we covered a lot here. Any questions or things you want to share?
No, I'm really locked in on that 7 and 9.
Okay.
Like that really, just to expand who I am, my choices, to just still be who I am, but like a fuller, richer, feels like self, is so interesting to me.
I love it. I love it. Good. Anything else?
That's it. That was a lot. That was wonderful.
It was a lot. I'm so glad. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for sharing yourself. Thank you for being willing to be out there and recorded. I will say for myself that oftentimes in study of the Enneagram, people have such horror stories about 8s and negative experiences with 8s. So I think that being with the both of us, being 8s, and people can see like the heart, and maybe, we might hide our hearts sometimes from a vulnerability perspective. It doesn't mean they're not in there. So I think just as this, you being willing to share yourself and then also share out, I just really appreciate it.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.